Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ready, Set, Action with Deborah Horowitz and myself, Christina Whitmer. We are looking forward to today's discussion. Today, we're going to talk about the candidate experience and specifically 3 tips to help convert top talent. There is a huge fight for top talent today. Looking forward to this live stream. Deb has tons of experience in this area. I'm looking forward to her. It's kind of enlightening me a couple of things that I may be out of date on. Welcome. And how's it going, Deb?
It's going great. How about you? We're inching closer to Thanksgiving. I'm not ready.
I will be whether I'm ready or not, right? So, I mean, this is a competitive job market, no doubt about it. Like it's a hot market and the perks and all these things. So, tell me, I would love for you to kick us off here and start with this tips. I mean, I have been a business owner for a little while now, so being in the job market, I hear experiences, but I definitely lost touch with it. So, I think it affects even how I recruit and hire sometimes. Sometimes my practices may not be as sharp. So looking forward to what you've seen and what you have learned about this space.
Yeah, we've got a lot to share, and I know that you've got your own tidbits of knowledge to pass along as well. I would say the tip number 1 is that first impressions matter. And they so much so that it may not even, because you're so caught up in your day to day and you're so busy, and recruiting is just another thing that is on your to-do list, that you don't really take the time ahead of time to think through what is the first impression that I am delivering to this potential candidate. And it really starts with the very first time that they have a touch with your brand, whether it's that job posting or they've come to the career section of your website. It's really, how welcoming do they feel, right? And also, what is that professional vibe that they're getting from that content that you're delivering to them? It's so very important. Even if it's a phone call, just to set up the interview. Is it done professionally? Do they feel like their schedule was taken into consideration, or are you just, pulling ahead and just saying, well, I'm only available at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, So if you can't make it, don't even bother. So really thinking about it from their perspective is so critical. And then with that, it's not just that initial interaction, but what is that application process like? There are some applicant tracking systems out there, and those that recruit high volume or just of people over the course of the year, they understand that not everything is perfect in the technology that you work with, right? So you think about, okay, how do I perhaps use a workaround to make the experience better when the technology is not delivering a great candidate experience? So look at things like, is it a simple application form? You're just asking for the basics, and then maybe they could upload their resume, but you're not asking them to upload their resume and then go through like 20 minutes to regurgitate what's already on their resume and type it out for you in the applicant tracking system. To the point of what we talked about last week, and we've talked about previously, nobody has that patience anymore. They don't want to have to go through your hoops, and they don't have to. If they feel like it's too complicated, they'll just leave your website. You'll never know that they were there.
Yeah.
and you could have missed out on a great candidate, So definitely think about that. And then always, always mobile, right? We talk about that when we're talking about marketing. But it's just as equally important when we're talking about the candidate experience side of things, because that's where, the large percentage, 80% or more, are going to be looking at and completing those forms on their mobile devices. So got to make sure that it is mobile friendly. I think the third thing with first impressions is, setting up the expectations about how you're going to communicate with them through this process. Setting those expectations, so that, you know, are you going to be emailing them with updates? Should they expect a text message to coordinate scheduling a time for that initial interview? All of those things, I think, are so important for the candidate to understand your unique process, because not everybody is doing it in the same way. And so it helps them feel like they're engaged and not disengaged in that process. So that's very, very important. And then I think that it's also, what's the timeline? Setting that expectation for the timeline. If I get through that initial phone screen, what happens then? And literally, you can communicate that with in your email conversations, in your phone conversations with them. You can have it actually spelled out on your website. If you're hiring multiple people throughout the year and you don't want to go you waste your time talking through that process over and over again, you can spell it out on the website and refer them to check that particular part of your website for the hiring process, and make sure that they're in line with the way that you coordinate and handle those activities. Then I think it's also important that you set the expectation internally. So say I've got a department manager that's actually going to be doing the interviewing. What is that clear expectation about, from the time that resume falls in their lap to the time that they schedule that initial phone screen or whatever it is, that they understand the expectation that you have as the leader of the organization, and making sure that nobody falls through the cracks away.
Yeah.
So, it's about communication, just like in everything we do from a marketing perspective, putting yourself in the place of the candidate, and making sure that you're delivering that information to them that you would want have delivered to you if you were a candidate.
Yeah, and I think make sure you document the stuff, like just make it repeatable, right? So if you send an email, make it a template, so you're not recreating things in the future, but get this stuff locked down so that you can have a process to hone and improve. So
absolutely, it should be a process, and you're right, it should be in writing for everybody in the organization to understand what that process is. They can reiterate it as well as they go, as they talk to the candidates, because sometimes you'll have other people that are sitting in on those interviews as well, to give their feedback and input as to the fit within the organization, and are you all seeing the same skills that could be utilized, and things of that nature.
Nice. Cool. Anything else for tip 1? Is that it? You good?
Isn't that enough for one tip? My goodness.
It's a pretty good one, I have to say. It's a lot of bites to process.
It was a lot of bites, yes.
Well,
but first impressions has a lot going in it, right?
Yes, for sure. So, absolutely. So tip number 2, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the interview experience. And I will say across all of these tips is that these people that you are talking to or interacting with or emailing, these are all potential, not just people who might work with you or for you. They are possibly people that influence clients. This is a networking opportunity. I like to think of it because it helps my approach to it. These are
Yeah.
people who may influence and are in this bubble, like somehow they're in that space that you're going to see. There's a good chance you'll see them again if you do local networking, if you're seeing things. So, connect with them, be respectful, and all those kind of things. Sorry about that. I,
Well,
sorry
your
about that.
kitty has some valid points there.
Exactly, valid point. So we'll see if I can get this done. So, a little bit about the interview experience. So whether it's a Zoom call or in person, you've already done the first impressions kind of things. But once you're doing, whether it's a couple different types of interviews or different levels or different people, you prepare for this, right? So, get your questions set, understand why you're asking the questions. So what you want to do is, there's all kinds of questions to understand. Is somebody, detail oriented? Do they have a knack for customer service? Do they have sales abilities? Like all these things, right? You can start to craft them, but try to get them connected to who you are as a company, what your culture is, what your values are. So take these types of questions that are proven to learn things, right? But try to put yourself and your brand into them, because a lot of people, especially depending on sort of what level of person you're hiring, there's preparation or rehearsed things that happen, right? So try to bring them into your culture. Maybe try to ask the questions by using examples that are happening in your workspace, because the more you get a sense of how they might react in a situation that you actually experienced, the more you're going to have a sense of how that might work well together. And I think, we talked a little bit before about making sure you complement yourself with what you need, not people who are identical to you, right? So if you need certain things, you have to find, people mimic, right, when they're trying to get your favor. So you really have to break through a lot of those things. So I really think that the way you do an interview is very important. And even if you're a very personal and fun person, I think you have to try to be ultra professional at the first stage of these conversations. Um, I think setting the tone that business is this and it's got this level of important, and then there's sort of the humanity. So wherever you decide that is, like how the more conversational stuff, I think setting the tone up front is very important personally. That could be definitely something for me too, because I can get super casual and super silly sometimes. So it's important for me with anybody I work with to make sure they know how important business is to me and the success of it. And I don't want any confusion. So I have to sort of adjust my approach with that. So I'd say kind of make sure the environment is set appropriate, professional, welcoming, and engaging, right? So you can do all those things together. Create your question set relevant, right? Use some examples, make it relevant to what you're looking for in that job, but somehow see if you can explain your culture and values in those same moments so you can get a better understanding of how that person is or is not a fit. And ideally, you want to see someone who is trying to, vet you as well, right? Someone who's trying to see if you're a good fit for them, right? So anything less is it just depends on the job, but it could be concerning because you've got someone who wants to do the job regardless. And I don't think that's a problem in general, but when you're a small business and this is like your first, second, third, fourth, fifth hire, it's so critical that you get someone who wants to be something, wants to grow, wants to be part of the team. Because small business, you wear a lot of hats, right? So if I worked in a big corporate environment for most of my life, it's going to freak me out if you say I need to order toner, but when I'm something else, right? But that's very
Right.
common in small business, right? Suddenly you're
Yeah.
doing things, and it's some people like it, some people don't. So you really have to pick out these pieces, you know, for that. So I don't know if you've had any questions, like I'm sure you have some experience with that process yourself.
Oh, for sure. And I think the cultural ad, is so important. No matter if it's your fifth hire or your 5,000th hire,
Hmm. Yeah.
to really to look at them not only in what they might be able to deliver in that role, but you know is there opportunity? Are they someone that you feel that they are willing to grow and change and morph, because everything's moving so fast. Roles
Mhm.
even change very quickly in organizations these days, in
Right.
order to meet the market demand, so that's
Hmm.
important. And I think when you're having those conversations with those candidates, make sure that in that interview time that you have added in time for them to ask their questions.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that's equally as telling, to get a sense of how inquisitive are they? How much do they really want to know about your business that you may not have covered, while you were going through the explanation of the role in the company?
Yeah, and I do you ever find if they don't have questions, do you do something different, or do you just let that go, or do you prep, like do you try to feed them questions, or any thoughts on that piece?
Sometimes people freeze, right? It's a very stressful situation to be thinking, oh my gosh, if, if I don't get this, I don't know when the next opportunity is going to come along, from the job seeker perspective. So I think you can give them grace and just, if they haven't asked questions at that time period, let them know if they have any questions that come up, that they are certainly willing, able to email you, within the next day or two. So give a time frame for it, right? And put some guideline around, and they can additional questions, because you are moving through a process. So everything needs to
Right.
be timely, right?
Right. Hmm.
But give them that opportunity to kind of walk out there. And I think we've all been in an interview in our lifetime where you walk out and you say, oh darn, I forgot to ask this,
Yeah.
or we didn't cover
Hmm.
X.
Hmm.
And so by giving them that grace to be able to follow up with you, really can give you a better idea of who they can be as a potential employee.
Got it. Yeah. No, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. So what about tip number 3? What do you have for us there?
So it's more follow up from the perspective of the employer to the potential candidate, and making sure that you give them some feedback along the way. There's so many times in talent acquisition where we hear candidates say, yeah, I applied for that role, and never heard back from them. I just fell into this black hole or whatever. And to your point about the whole experience, you have to keep in mind that you're representing your brand. And so you want that experience to be as positive as possible with that candidate.
Absolutely.
Whether you end up hiring them or not, it is a reflection on your brand as to how they felt throughout the process. So if you can give them feedback, tell them when they should expect to hear back from you, and then follow up with that promise. So if you say the hiring manager is going to be making a decision by Tuesday, so you should hear from me by Wednesday or Thursday, um, make sure it's on your calendar to get back to that person by
Yeah.
Wednesday or Thursday,
Mhm.
and definitely follow. If you can provide constructive feedback, if they did not move forward in the process, as to maybe there wasn't enough years of experience for the role that you really needed. But keep that door open as part, as you're delivering that feedback, that makes them walk away feeling like they were valued, that, and that if they get more experience, hey, Deb said, if I get a couple more years of
Yeah.
experience in X, Y, or Z, I could always come knocking at her door and
Mhm.
see if there's another opportunity. And I feel that that's, really important for them to understand. And maybe there's a time where you're inundated with so many applicants for the role that it's going to take you a couple of weeks to get through that process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
making sure that there's something set up where that first person that you interviewed isn't feeling disengaged and kind of like wondering what the heck's going on, that you keep them updated throughout that process. And maybe that's, hey, we're still working through the process. If you are interested in continuing the conversation, look at our YouTube channel, and get to understand some of the products or services and how we position those, or things that will continue to have them engaged with you through that waiting period, because that first one in 2 weeks seems like a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
And,
Yeah.
and we are just busy, busy, busy going. And 2 weeks seems like it was yesterday to us. So,
Mhm.
really, again, understanding where they're coming from. And then
Yeah.
when you're offering, make sure that those offer letters are professional as possible, that you have all of the details spelled out for them in terms of the role, the timing, the responsibilities, the compensation, the hours,
Mhm.
the benefits, everything with the expectations for
Yeah.
the role. If you need to get someone, an HR consultant or someone, to look at those ahead of time and kind of give you a template to follow, so
Mhm.
that you're doing everything legally required that you need to, and
Yep.
but also making sure that you have that checklist so you don't forget to include anything. I think that that's so important. And then, don't forget, when you're talking to these candidates, that you want to express, how your interviewing process impacts your cultural commitment to diversity and inclusion. If that's important to you, make sure that that's clearly expressed along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you just want them to have a positive experience, even if they end up not getting the job, and only one can. So there's a lot of them that you're going to be talking to that won't have that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think you reminded me, like, just like, these are just relationships, right? This person may be a good fit somehow in the future. So treat it as as a networking connection that may or may not
Yeah.
fit now. And, the other thing that popped in my head as you were talking was, just don't talk to people that aren't a fit, like, don't fit with the skills. Like, don't waste time or practice, or whatever it is. Just don't respect
Yeah.
that. So try to be as authentic and give the feedback, and don't play around with it. It's definitely a very serious thing. You're dealing with people's hopes and jobs, and it's very close to a lot of people's heart and all that stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. I think, the old adage, treat them as you would want to be treated yourself,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is, it should be a guiding force for you,
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
it comes to
agreed.
interviewing. Yeah.
Totally agree. So okay, well, anything else for that tip, or you good?
I think
More
I'm
bites
good.
to chew. More bites to
Lots,
chew.
lots of bites.
I must be ready for Thanksgiving if I keep talking about Thanksgiving.
Or I might be hungry for breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. So just a quick recap. We've got first impressions matter, right? How to think about those, pay attention to those, be very thoughtful in those first impressions. Number two, craft a standout interview experience, right? Whether it's the environment, the questions, how you share your culture. And then the third one is follow up is important and it's key. So timeliness and professional efficiency and in keeping that relationship, especially depending how long that cycle is for you, is very important. So
Absolutely.
I think that's it. Appreciate this one. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you will join us next time for Ready, Set, Action with Deborah Horowitz and Christina Whitmer. So you can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify for our podcast. And we will be back, I should say, after the Thanksgiving break. And then we will be diving right into December. So end of year stuff, I'm sure. Like, how do we wrap up the year with this much ready and set? So we'll be ready for 2025. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Take
Have
care.
a good day.